A vision becomes a milestone when it helps make our lives richer with love and laughter. When it helps make a cleaner, smarter, and a more beautiful planet. So that you can set off on joyous new journeys and adventures. Building stronger bonds and bridging impossible distances, which take you from the ever new to the forever beautiful. Opening up vistas and windows to a vibrant new world. A vision becomes a milestone when it touches millions of lives. Aditya Birla Group. Big in your life.
Wealthy in minerals, rapid industrialization, swift pace of development, creating its unique identity in the nation's development roadmap is the success story of Chhattisgarh. Chhattisgarh is presently ranked 4th in the Ease of Doing Business Index in India. A lot of credit for this goes to the Chhattisgarh's visionary leadership to create a bright future for its citizens. With the potential to generate 24,000 megawatts, Chhattisgarh is all set to be the power pivot of the country. Chhattisgarh has been topping the charts as the cleanest state. Due to the all-round rural development and agriculture welfare schemes, Chhattisgarh is a model state for rural prosperity and urban excellence. With the intent of the state leadership and results being seen on ground, Chhattisgarh is on the path of rapid and model growth and development.
There are those who are always looking for what's next. Changing lanes, shifting modes, always in command. Sensing what lies ahead. That first scent of yet another success. The all-new Hyundai Tucson next drives now.
माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी के विजन और प्रदेश के युवा मुख्यमंत्री पुष्कर सिंह धामी के मिशन से प्रगति के पथ पर निरंतर आगे बढ़ रहा है उत्तराखंड। रोजगार, शिक्षा, स्वास्थ्य, निवेश और भ्रष्टाचार मुक्त उत्तराखंड के सपने को साकार कर रही है उत्तराखंड सरकार। पर्यटन से राज्य में मिल रहे हैं आर्थिक प्रगति को पंख। उत्तराखंड के सीएम तक पहुंच रही जनता की आवाज। उत्तराखंड में बढ़ता निवेश बन रहा है विकास का मुख्य आधार। राज्य की जनता की सुनी मन की बात मिलने जा रहा है राज्य को मजबूत भू कानून का आधार। उत्तराखंड के वीर सैनिकों का हो रहा है सम्मान। प्रदेश में भ्रष्टाचार पर की बड़ी चोट। सुखी, समृद्ध, खुशहाली की तरफ लगातार है बढ़ना। जन जन का है सपना, आगे बढ़ता रहे उत्तराखंड अपना।
A land of awakening. A land of joy. A land where every step forward is a journey within. I have started my journey. When will you start yours?
With over 8,000 passionate employees working hard in difficult terrain, pushing boundaries, transforming India's energy landscape. we stand ready with innovative prowess to write another history, fueling the nation and contributing to India's energy security. We are Oil India Limited.
From the interior parts of hilly areas to metro cities, today there are more than 8,800 Jan Aushadhi Kendras have been opened to provide affordable and quality medicines. These centers have 1,616 types of medicines and 250 types of surgical devices available at up to 90% off. By providing affordable medicines to about 10 lakh patients every day, Jan Aushadhi has been able to save up to 18,000 crore rupees for needy people in the last 8 years. Quality is also at the forefront of medicines at low prices.
2025 तक हम छलांग लगा चुके होंगे $1 ट्रिलियन डिजिटल इकोनॉमी की ओर।
आज जब हम आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव मना रहे हैं तो मेरा भी यही सपना है कि भारत में हर हाथ में स्मार्टफोन हो, हर खेत में ड्रोन हो और हर घर में समृद्धि हो।
Digital India, catalyzing New India's decade. Jai Hind.
Jaya Jaya Gange, Jaya Jaya Gange, Namami Gange, nahi rukenge, hum swachh karenge. तू युग युग से बहती आई, तूने ही हमको पाला है। तेरी उंगली पकड़ चलना सीखा, जीवन तूने ही संभाला है। तेरा कर्ज चुकाना है हमको, कर्तव्य निभाना है हमको। नमामि गंगे, हम स्वच्छ करेंगे, हम स्वच्छ करेंगे।
Power Grid, a Maharatna PSU of Government of India, largest transmission utility of country,
embarked on one such remarkable journey to establish one nation, one grid, one frequency, high voltage integrated transmission network, an electric superhighway through which power flows across the length and breadth of the country. Meeting challenges has always been a way of life at Power Grid. Transmitting power, transforming lives.
REC unleashes the potential of energy. REC funds energy. Funding that catalyzes. Funding that inspires. Funding that transforms. For sustainability and reliability. For investment and development. Adding value every day in every way. This is what our energy is. This is REC.
We begin HT Summit with a session that I'm personally looking forward to. When it comes to the science of COVID, its management and impact, there's perhaps no one better than Dr. Ashish K. He's been HT's go-to during the last 2 years of the pandemic, telling us first about his hopes from the vaccine and then the terrible lows of the Delta wave, and now hopefully about what the post-COVID world is looking like. Can we finally say goodbye to the dreaded virus, or is another variant just lurking, which will again shut us down. Dr. Jha is also now the coordinator of the COVID-19 response as appointed by US President Joe Biden. And so, without further ado, let me hand over to HT's editor-in-chief, Sukumar Ranganathan.
Good evening and welcome to the 20th edition of the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit. The last 2 years have been extremely strange for one reason, COVID-19. So it's only natural that we begin our summit with a conversation on COVID. I have with me Dr. Ashish K, who is the head of the White House response team to COVID-19. And the interesting thing is, Dr. Jha and I are not strangers. We had a conversation 2 years ago when all of us knew so much less about COVID. And so, Dr. Jha, really good to see you on the other side. And my first question to you is, can I safely say that this is the other side?
Yes, I think you can safely say this is the other side. Look, obviously, COVID is not over. In some ways, it'll be with us forever, and we just have to continue to manage it. But if the question is, are the worst days of COVID behind us? My answer is absolutely. It is, given how much immunity there is against this virus in the population. Even if we see surges, even if we see new variants, the worst of this pandemic really should be behind us.
I wanted to speak to you about the variants because they've been cropping up with fairly regular intervals. And it's worrying because some of them seem much more infective than the original virus itself. Do you see variants being a big concern going forward?
Yeah, right now I would say variants are a concern. And here's how I think about it. We are seeing very rapid evolution of this virus. When you speak to most virologists and you look at kind of historical evolution of viruses, the speed with which SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, is evolving is really remarkable. There are a variety of reasons why that is happening. The primary one is we have so much immunity across the world between vaccinations and prior infections that it is putting an evolutionary pressure on the virus to find a way around that immunity wall. So we're seeing the emergence of more and more immune evasive viruses, versions of the virus, variants. But the good news is that as the virus is changing, so is humanity. We are able to do things like update vaccines. We're able to do things that can keep up with the virus and in fact get ahead of the virus. So it worries me that the virus continues to do what it does, but it reassures me that we as humanity can respond to it and are not powerless and not in terms of how we deal with it.
I remember from back during the first wave that you were among the first experts to suggest that schools could be opened safely. And I remember there being a huge debate about this, and you were this voice of reason standing out there and telling people that it was all right to open schools. What kind of public policy or public health response in terms of activities, in terms of opening up of educational institutions and other things, do you think we need to keep in mind, given that some of the variants are quite infective?
Yeah. So I think we have learned a lot about how to keep schools safe. And you know, look, you have to make priorities as a society of what's most important. And I think all of us would agree that educating children, making sure that schools are, because it obviously goes beyond just education. They're good for mental health, lots of other benefits of schools, social benefits. That has got to be among our highest priorities. And the good news is at this point, 2.5 years into managing this virus, we know how to keep schools safe. We've done it in the United States, it's been done in Europe, it's been done in India. So I would say my kind of mental model is if you get hit by something really bad, schools should be the last things to close and the first things to open up again. That's how you should prioritize things. And in the context of where we are, I see nothing that suggests schools should ever have to shut down again. But you know, we're as we manage it, we can do this in a way that keeps kids and teachers and everybody else safe.
One of the things that we noticed during the pandemic that there were two broad philosophies in dealing with it. One was the approach that most countries, including the United States and India, adopted, which was about reacting very actively to the virus itself and to the pandemic, while ensuring that activities could go on to the extent possible. The other one is exemplified by China, which follows a zero COVID approach. What do you think we need to do in case there is a surge? And the reason I'm asking you this is because, as you yourself mentioned, we do keep having these waves from time to time.
Yeah, look, there could have been a case for zero COVID in the early days of the pandemic. At this point, it doesn't make sense to me as a strategy. It's certainly not the strategy that India is pursuing. It is not the strategy that the United States is pursuing. And here's why. Look, we have to take different approaches to a pandemic at different phases of the pandemic. And when you don't have any tools, when you don't have vaccines, you don't have treatments, you don't have good diagnostic testing, being more aggressive in controlling the virus makes a lot of sense. But that's not where we are, right? I mean, if you think about it, right, 1 billion Indians have been vaccinated. 230 million Americans have been vaccinated. We are at a point where vaccines are widely available, easily accessible. We have treatments now that are coming online. We need to keep working on making them come online faster. In that context, I think zero COVID, to me at least, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What it seems to me is at this point, it's about managing the virus, making sure that it doesn't kill a lot of people, that it doesn't disrupt society, that it lets us function. But the virus is going to be around forever. I don't fully understand how a zero COVID policy is sustainable over the long run.
Why do we keep seeing these surges from time to time? Why? I know that these waves are not as big as some of the previous waves that we've seen. But every time there is an infective variant, we do see a surge. Yep. Sometimes it's geographically contained. Sometimes it's a little more widespread. Do you think these surges are things that we should get used to?
I think for a little bit longer, we will see more of these ups and downs. Over time, I think the virus will settle into more of a seasonal pattern where we probably will see it act a bit more like influenza. It's starting to get there now. It's very interesting. It's a new virus in the human population. So the virus is evolving and our immunity is evolving. I do believe there will come a time when this will be very seasonal, as many other coronaviruses are. And it is more seasonal now than it was 2.5 years ago. But we're still seeing surges and waves at other times, not just during the winter. And I think that is because of, as I described earlier, you have very rapid virus evolution. So you're getting these new variants that are very immune evasive, and they cause these little mini waves. But there is so much in the immunity in the population that does sort of limit how big a wave, how much suffering is there in the wave, and it sort of peters out. And then the virus continues evolving, gets a new variant, you get another little, and that will slow down over time. And we will get to more of a steady state. But we're just not quite there yet.
One of the things that we've noticed as far as the virus is concerned is that the variants, some of them are more infective, some of them are immune evasive, but none of them so far, fortunately, after Delta, have been more lethal than the original virus. Do you think this is a matter of luck, or do you think this is the natural trajectory of evolution?
This is a very good question. And there is a widely held belief that viruses always evolve to become less lethal over time. I wish that was true. I don't think that is true. In fact, there's plenty of historical evidence of viruses that evolve to become more lethal over time. So I would say that I'm very pleased to see that Omicron in general has been less severe than Delta. But if you think about it, Delta probably was more severe than Alpha or the original variant, right? So we did see evolution to more serious. Now we've seen evolution towards less serious. And my hope is that we will continue seeing evolution towards either the same or more or less serious over time. But I would not assume that that is a given, given that viruses can really surprise us.
Talk to us a little bit about the evolution of vaccines. How do you see coronavirus vaccines evolving over time?
Yeah. So first of all, I would remind us what a remarkable achievement the coronavirus vaccines have been, right? Whether it's Covishield and Covaxin in India, obviously Pfizer, Moderna, the AstraZeneca vaccine in Europe. These were all vaccines that humanity, as a human population, we built these vaccines in extremely short time without cutting corners, and they have turned out to be life-saving. I mean, the reason why deaths are so low in so many places around the world is because of the high levels of vaccination. And if you think about how India turned around its situation after Delta, I mean, Delta, of course, was awful. But then you saw this massive ramp up of vaccine production through Serum and elsewhere. But you also saw a phenomenal vaccination campaign. I will tell you, it's one of the most impressive vaccination campaigns in the world throughout this pandemic and kind of in history. So very, very impressive. And that has left the Indian population in much better shape. I would say similarly here in the United States, the level of vaccinations has left the US population in better shape. Always can do more, always can get more people vaccinated. So it's not that it's done. So that's been the first generation of vaccines. Now what we're seeing is the second generation of vaccines. The second generation of vaccines are getting updated against Omicron. And what we're seeing in the early data is that these vaccines are better. They're better at dealing with Omicron because they're targeted towards Omicron. And the question that is out there in the vaccine world is, are we going to keep doing this? Every year, are we going to keep updating it to the next one? I remind people, first of all, if that's where we land, that's okay. We do that with the flu vaccine every year, and we can do that. It's not a big deal. But my hope is that while we may have to do that for a year or two, that we can start building vaccines that are far more resilient against evolving virus, that are variant resistant, that can really prevent infections. Right now, the vaccines are best at preventing serious illness. They're decent at preventing infection, but that doesn't last as long as we want it to. So I think the current path we're on is good, but in my mind, not good enough. We should be striving for much better, more robust vaccines. But the truth is, that's probably a year or two away before we start seeing that be widely available.
Do you see us taking annual shots of the coronavirus vaccine, much like we take annual shots of the influenza vaccine? Is that the direction that we are headed in?
For a little while, yes. It's hard, again, new virus, new vaccine. So I can't predict what life will be like in 10 years. But I think for the next couple of years, I think that's a very reasonable assumption. Now, two caveats on that. One is if you're a very high-risk person. I think about my elderly parents who are actually in India right now. But they live in New Jersey and they're in their 80s. And for them, they might need vaccines more than once a year, right? Just for some period of time because they need a higher level of protection. I think that's fine. The other thing is we don't know how long it'll be an annual shot. We may, if we can build these vaccines that are more variant proof, we may go to every 5 years or every 10 years. And again, we don't know. So I'm hopeful that we will be able to transition at some point in the next few years out of an annual into something even less frequent, but we'll have to see. But for now, my mental model, what I tell my friends and family is, prepare for an annual shot. And that's not that big a deal. Most people are able to do that. And that's what we should prepare for a majority of people for the next few years.
How good is our understanding of long COVID right now? Do we have a grip of what all it involves and how we could try and make it better for millions of people who are suffering from it?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So let me talk a little bit about long COVID. Long COVID, basically any persistent symptoms that go beyond a certain period of time. Some people use 4 weeks, other people use 12 weeks after the initial infection. I remind people of a couple of pieces of context. One is post-viral syndromes are widely known. It's something we've dealt with, taking care of a lot of people with influenza, flu, who 4, 6, 8 weeks later are still suffering symptoms. So this is a common phenomenon of many viruses. That said, it does seem to be more of a problem with SARS-CoV-2, that COVID seems to be particularly prone. Now, the second point is to your question of how well do we understand it. I would say we are learning, we're getting better at understanding it, but there are some fundamental issues that we still need to sort through. One thing I feel very clear about is long COVID is not one condition, right? It is not, because for some people, it's about persistent virus. For other people, it's immunologic. For other people, it may be the injury that they suffered from the initial infection that's causing long-term complications and symptoms. So there's a series of phenomena. The next thing we need to do scientifically and clinically is separate those out. Refer to people as having individual things and not all of it as long COVID. But so we've got to sort that out. I expect that to happen by scientists and clinicians over the next 6-12 months. And then, of course, once you do that, you got to start targeting therapies around that. Those are things that we are working on quite aggressively in the US under the NIH. The president has been, President Biden has been very concerned about this and has really pushed the administration to try to do more to learn and support people. Of course, this is not an America-only phenomenon, right? It's a global phenomenon. My hope is that we're going to see a lot more work on long COVID in the next year.
Just continuing on from my question on long COVID, and based on partly on one part of your answer, around the world, we've seen a lot of anecdotal evidence of heart disease increasing in young people after who've suffered COVID, brain strokes in some people who've had COVID, menstrual cycles in some women going awry after they've suffered COVID. And in some cases, there are these small scientific studies, not with huge samples, but with small samples, which seem to suggest that this is indeed the case. What's our understanding of the impact of COVID over the long term?
That's a very good question. So I would say two things. First is we know that COVID can cause vascular damage, can damage the lining of the blood vessels. The reason that's important is because we know that if you get damage to your blood vessels, that can trigger a heart attack, can trigger a stroke. So clinically and physiologically, it makes sense that some people will have an increased risk of heart disease or stroke or other conditions. The issue here is, as you said, the data here are just beginning to come in. They're mostly small studies. The problem of small studies is you can get spurious findings. You can get, because you've got a small sample size, you may, just through luck, see an association that doesn't pan out in bigger studies. I'm not suggesting that's what's happening here. What I'm suggesting is we have to be cautious. We have to be thoughtful. I do believe that in the upcoming months, we are going to see bigger studies, and they will either confirm that, in fact, indeed is causing these things, or it will dispel it. I obviously don't know what it will do, but it is, of course, concerning, and we got to pursue that line of work to really better understand. Is COVID setting people up for higher rates of heart disease and strokes and other important complications?
How would you rate our response on the therapeutic front? I know that on the vaccine front, we've really, like you said, done exceedingly well. We got the vaccines out in time around the world. We managed to inoculate a huge number of people. But on the therapeutic front, on the discovery of drugs that can alleviate illness itself, treat the illness, what's our progress there?
Yeah, I will tell you, I may be unique in my view on this. I'm actually even more impressed with how we've done on therapeutics, not to undercut our very impressive work on vaccines. Let me explain why. Therapeutics against viruses is very, very hard to do. It took us more than a dozen years to really start coming up with decent treatments against HIV, right? It's just very hard to come up with treatments against viruses. If I think about other viruses that we treat, generally it has been years and years and years of hard work to sort this out. Obviously, therapeutics came in after vaccines, and so people tend to see it as, oh, it's not been as successful. But I will say to you that I have been very pleasantly surprised that 2 years in, we have Paxlovid, we have Molnupiravir, and there are more coming in the months ahead. So my hope is by the time we get to, let's say, next summer, we'll have multiple oral antivirals. We have other, of course, monoclonal antibodies and remdesivir, so I don't mean to not mention those. But the point is that my hope is by next spring to summer, we're going to have a large number of different therapeutics widely available around the world. The challenge so far has been that while we have Paxlovid and while we have molnupiravir, it has not gotten out to the whole world as quickly as it needs to. India has done a very good job around molnupiravir, widely used there. And I think you're going to see more of these two and other drugs become widely available. So, it took a little longer than vaccines. Vaccines were a miracle in how quickly they got produced. But I will tell you that the therapeutics arriving within a year and a half was really, really impressive as well.
What have governments and public health managers learned from this pandemic and how to respond to it? As it enhanced our ability to respond, to be quicker, to think better?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And as you can imagine, it's a complex question that requires a long answer, but I will try to give you, I think, a short one. First, it has certainly taught us the importance of investment in health and public health. Countries that had robust public health systems generally tended to do much better. They were able to get up and running quickly, had a public health workforce, could use testing and tracing. There were a lot of things, a lot of tools that they could use. And I hope one of the things that comes out of this pandemic is countries looking at their investments in health and saying, we've really got to make sure we're investing adequately. Globally, among high and middle income countries, we tend to see 9-10% of GDP going to health. To me, that's the right number. For some countries, maybe a little higher, some countries a little lower. But we really need to be making those kinds of investments. And to be very clear, yes, it's got to be in the healthcare system, hospitals, doctors, but it's also got to be in the public health infrastructure. The second thing we learned is the importance of data and gathering data because data tells you where the outbreak is, what the problem is. Here, again, countries varied a lot. I would actually argue that even though there are lots of challenges with the Indian public health system, they actually, by the few months in, data was starting to come in reasonably well, ahead of many other higher income countries. So I actually think there's a lot that India did well on that front. There are certainly challenges in the US that we had to overcome. And I would say in that first year of the response, things were really a struggle. We got better over time. But data is really important. Last point on this, which I think people in general had not adequately appreciated, is the importance of communicating openly and clearly with people. I think one of the things that we have seen in countries that have done very well is leadership, public health leadership, but political leadership, communicating openly, communicating clearly about what we know, what we don't know, what's happening with the pandemic. That is something that people often don't think about as an important part of a public health response. I think we learned in this pandemic it's an extraordinarily important part of the public health response.
Leading on from what you said about communication, there was just so much misinformation about COVID. And I have to ask you this because on Twitter, for instance, you were among the few voices of reason when it came to COVID. What is this whole barrage of misinformation that was out there for people to consume, and many people did consume it? What has it taught you as a man of science, as a man of medicine, on managing information well during a crisis like this?
So first and foremost, it is incredibly important that we manage information, that we don't see information, communication, engagement with the public as somehow an afterthought, that, it's second order. No, it's actually not second order. It's actually first order, especially if you want the public to change their behavior, especially if you want public to do certain things. There's no way to do it beyond engaging. Point number one. Point number two on this is information vacuums create fertile ground for misinformation. So this is a problem for medicine, public health, science, because scientists are inherently careful. So you see one or two studies and you say, we should wait for more studies before we talk about this. We should wait for more data. Of course, that's a good thing in general. Under normal circumstances, you want to be cautious and careful. But what that often meant in the pandemic is it left the space open for people who wanted to share and spread misinformation. And so one of the things that is absolutely a key lesson is don't leave information vacuums alone. Fill it with good information, even if it's incomplete, even if you don't know all the facts. Don't overstate it. Don't say things that you don't know yet. But one of the things I tried to do often was, even if we didn't have all the answers, to say, here's what we do know so far. Here's what we don't know. Here's when we're going to find out. But at least it gave people a sense of where we were. And yet I think a lot of scientists struggled with that. We're really going to have to work on training the next generation of public health scientists and physicians and others on how to communicate in the context of uncertainty. You don't have to overstate it, but if you don't communicate at all, you actually create an environment where misinformation thrives.
How would you rate the ability of countries to work together to deal with this pandemic? Because we saw that in the original weeks and months of the pandemic, it was almost as if it was every man or every person for himself or herself.
Yeah.
But then over a period of time, you did see countries beginning to come together to try and see whether there were things that they could really do. How do you think that has worked out?
Yeah, as you might imagine, it's a mixed track record, right? It's a mixed report card. So let's talk about some places where I think cooperation has been great. One of the places where cooperation has been amazing is in the scientific world. What's interesting is while countries in the early days were, being very often very nationalistic and saying we're going to focus on ourselves, that's not how science was moving. I mean, the reason we were able to produce this many vaccines this quickly, learn about this virus and as quickly as we did, is there were scientific collaborations happening that were truly international. I was on a lot of these sort of listservs and communication things that were happening. It was remarkable to me, hearing from a scientist in Singapore saying, this is what we're seeing. An Indian scientist saying, well, that's interesting. We're seeing something a little bit different. And then, somebody from America or Europe then triangulating, and all of it happening in live time. So there was, I think, in the scientific world, there was amazing collaboration, exactly the kind of collaboration you'd want to see, all of us teaching each other and learning from each other. Unfortunately, our politicians weren't quite as good on that. And look, it's a complicated moment. And there was, I think, initially this effort to look a bit more inward. But over time, as you said, you saw more and more collaboration, cooperation. I will certainly tell you, as this president, when he came in, President Biden came in, he changed very much the stance of the U.S., put us back into WHO. Very much leaned into global leadership and American global leadership. And we ended up, donating 650 million doses of the vaccines, really making sure that there was strength behind COVAX. These international cooperation mechanisms that I think had been hurt in the early days of the pandemic got rebuilt. Perfectly? No. Do we have more work to do? Yes. But I do think leadership matters. And I think that one of the things that I think a lot of very good leaders recognized is that when you lean in and have a more global approach, everybody is better off for it.
Dr. Jha, I know you have to go, but one last question. What is the one thing that you feel really good about when you think about our response to COVID? And what is the one thing that worries you the most about what could happen with the virus in the future?
Yeah, boy. So the thing that gives me the most assurance is the remarkable capacity and capability of the scientific community, the global scientific community, our ability to respond to this virus. So if we have a real change in the virus, our ability to build new vaccines, to build more therapeutics. Science has really, really delivered in this pandemic. And that scientific community remains very strong, very robust, very vibrant. And it gives me assurance that if Mother Nature throws a curveball at us, we will be able to respond. What worries me? What worries me is that we do live in this information landscape where there is a lot of misinformation about things. And ultimately, science is only as good in terms of making people's lives better as you can engage people, get them to take vaccines, get them to take treatments, that and help them understand why it's valuable to them. That is a set of challenges that I would say we as a global community have not solved How do you communicate effectively? How do you cut through that misinformation? That continues to be our biggest hindrance. It is the thing that slows us down the most as a global community. And it worries me about our ability to continue really fighting that misinformation and sharing good information with people.
Dr. Jha, thank you very much, and all the best in your efforts to keep fighting the good fight. We need more scientists, we need more doctors to do just this. Thank you.
Thank you for having me back. It was a pleasure. And, look, it was 2 years ago that we got together. I'm hoping that we don't have to be talking about COVID in the same way 2 years from now. We are in a much better place. But thank you for inviting me and letting me be a part of this really important event.
It's an exciting time to be a woman sports person because finally women are beginning to get some of the credit that's due to them. For years and years, pay gap has been a reality, and now BCCI has finally said that the days of getting paid more just because you're a male sports person is over. Of course, there's a long way to go, and the strong women in the sporting sphere need all the strength they have to just fight for equal rights. There's no one more capable than our next guest, Mithali Raj and Jhulan Goswami. Mithali Raj retired from cricket in June this year, but not before becoming the most experienced cricketer with 232 women's one-day international, most runs in them, and most half-centuries and most games as skipper as well. She led India to 2 one-day World Cup finals, 2005 and 2017, and was also awarded the Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna last year. Jhulan Goswami ended her career as the leading wicket taker in women's one-day internationals and remains one of the 2 players, along with Mithali Raj, to play more than 200 one-day internationals. Jhulan was accorded a fitting farewell in September when India clean swept a 3-match series in England. It's over to HT sports editor Ashish Malhotra, who's in conversation with them.
They started their careers as Mithali Raj and Jhulan Goswami, but by the time they were done, they were just known as Mithudi and Jhuludi. That's the kind of impact they had on the game in India and around the world. They inspired millions with not just their cricket, but also with their perseverance, the way they played the game, the way they won, the way they set records. It all inspired people to come, watch the game, and play it. And now, finally, as their careers come to an end, they are perhaps seeing the fruits of their labor trickle down to so many other younger players who took up the game after watching them. The BCCI announced that we will have the Women's IPL taking place in 2023, and they very recently also announced that women will get equal match fees as compared to the men. Now, this is a big step and something that women cricketers have asked for a long, long time. And on this historic occasion, we would love to have Mithali Raj and Jhulan Goswami join us for the 20th edition of the HT Leadership Summit. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
So we'll jump into the questions directly, and instantly we'll speak about what it means to have equal match fees. Is this something you all thought about? Is this something you felt was a big thing? Is this something that you wanted to happen while you guys were playing?
Fast bowler, the opener. No, captain should start, na? Captain should start. Others will follow.
So I think it's a huge step. It's I've said in numerous interviews the past 2 days that it's like a milestone in Indian women's cricket, and also globally, because as many know that from where women's cricket has come, and it has evolved into a sport now where there's so many talented players coming up. The team has been doing well in the last 4-5 years. Since 2017, I mean, many of you have become part of the fan base of women's cricket. Globally also, the women's cricket has gained popularity. There is a huge growth. So I think it has come in the at the right time, and if we aim to see women's cricket come to a level where today men's cricket is, this is the step in that direction. And in terms of young girls who are looking to take up cricket as a profession for their parents, this is like a confidence, and it shows faith that this career option can be a sustainable one, where a girl who's passionate to play cricket can aim to spend all her energy, time, investing into turning this profession as a career, and not necessarily have to go out in search of jobs tomorrow, because it's by having the same match fees, it's in a way saying that you the sport can sustain you. It can be a sport that you can look after your family, you can invest into your own training in terms of resources and facilities. So I think overall it is a huge step in the right direction.
And what does the fast bowler have to say?
Well, what she said, definitely I'm not going to say same thing, but I'll say in another way. I feel that this movement will have a lot of impact in our society, because we come from such background. Sports has always been a secondary, as a child, a girl child. So now people will start thinking in a different way. That people will start say that you go and play any kind of sports, any kind of event, must go and play. But this is a one small step towards the gender equality. And the second thing, in India, a lot of others events are going on, but unfortunately all those events, that counterparts, they don't get same amount of facilities. Fortunately, we get that kind of good facilities. Yes, pay scale probably now we start, but in terms of facilities, a lot of others women's team did not get that kind of facilities. Probably this decision what BCCI have taken, it will give all other federation to give them same amount of respect and same amount of facilities, and it will help Indian sporting culture. I think it's a huge step, and definitely must thanks to BCCI and all of them. And this thought was going on since long time. Both of us had done a lot of conversation, but everything takes time, and this is the right time I found.
Indeed, one of the things that you just mentioned was where you actually spoke about a lot of young cricketers. But when we would look at women's cricket in general, we would have this particular scene where a lot of cricketers would give up the sport when they were around 19 or 20 years old. Jobs were not easily available. They were very talented, and they would play it while they were in school or in college. But when it came to becoming a choice of, do I play cricket or do I pursue a career, it was always a very difficult choice, because women's cricket in India was pretty much an amateur sport of sorts. You don't really get paid as much as perhaps for the kind of effort that you put in. So when you people were playing, was there ever a consideration of what to do if not cricket?
Well, I think that thought probably would have crossed all of us at some point, and just not us as players, but even our parents. Because see, at some point, cricket for girls for a long time was not we were not able to sustain ourselves, because there was absolutely no money. So even if we were national cricketers, most of the help financially that we got were from our parents' pocket. Or like I'm employed with Railways, and Jhulan is employed with Air India. So prior to BCCI adopting women's cricket, these are the two institutions which offered jobs, and Indian Railways still is the only institution now which is still offering jobs to the women cricketers. I think other than this outlet, there is no other way that a girl can continue to play cricket and sustain also, if she is not from an affluent family. Say they're from a lower middle class, where or from say, such a background where the entire family is dependent on them, then they are forced to change their field for to look after the parents. But this move has really changed that. And of course, what she rightly said is that in a way, now the society looks at women's cricket with a lot of respect. That is also something so important. It comes with all these decisions. Um, and I think, like, as you also said, that there were many talented players who probably could have extended their careers, or we could have had far better pool of players with had we had similar match fees in the past, or in some way, there had but then it started slowly, yes, coming under BCCI. Things started to change, and if you're looking at change, it doesn't happen overnight. Everything takes time. There is no sport in the history where the women have started on say on par with men. Even women's tennis, when it started, it was nowhere close to men's tennis. Over a period of time, that the women's tennis also has grown. So similarly, women's cricket has its own journey as a sport. The evolution of it is very different from men's cricket, and people should view it as a different sport and not constantly compare it, like, acha, in men's cricket, the essential contract is so much, women's cricket ka nahi hai, or match fees utna nahi hai. These were the talks in the past, but slowly I think now things are changing for better, and this is sort of an example that, as Jhulan said, many other federations or organizations can take a leaf from and try to promote women's sport. Unless and until you promote and start somewhere, you cannot take it further. The process of growth has to go on, has to continue.
Indeed, Jhulan, when you have a reputation of being somebody who just put the hand around the shoulder of the younger player and sort of, get them going and give them this kind of support they needed. When you saw a youngster sort of thinking about walking away from the sport, what would you tell them? How would you sort of try and get through to them? What sort of argument would you make to try and keep them in the sport?
It was difficult to explain to them that some people used to say, why should I play cricket? I'm talking about cricket because I am related to cricket. So some people said, why should I play cricket? What I'll get? Somebody's parents keep argue with me that why should I give my kids into the cricket? For what reason? You are not going to get anything. Only that one government job, and that's not enough today's life. So there's nothing is there. Yes, love, affection, passion, everything is different, but apart from that, today's world, you need to survive, and you need everybody wants to stay in a decent amount of luxury today. So my daughter will not get all those things. So it's quite tough to explain them, because when you saw the few girls in coming to the academy, they have such talented girls, but after a certain point of time, their parents said, no, it's fine. I just put my daughter into the sports, but we don't want to give her that much time for sports. My daughter will go back to study, and we have to support her in that, because we feel cricket mein utna zyada kuch hai nahi jo hame chahiye. So these are the things always there, but I'm glad that things are getting changed. Probably we thought that everything will change overnight. It will not happen. That process was there. That process was pretty slow earlier, but now obviously that pay scale will come up, future will get definitely central contract will come up, and now in coming year, women's IPL. So they have something other option also there. If you're not able to, because only few girls will play for India, what about the rest of the girls? What they will earn? And domestic cricket, we don't going to earn that amount of money. You have to rely on railway job, because at this moment railways only give those security. What about the others girls? What about their security? Yes, there is a women's, if there is women's IPL start next year, definitely that will be huge bonus for upcoming budding cricketers. They will come and they'll take the sports as a professionally, and that is an important thing. And when that revolution happened, you will see the growth of women's cricket, particularly in our country, because everybody understands this event. Everybody know how to play, when to play, what to do. You do not need to explain them to how to play, but just give them little bit of nice platform, nice touch up things. And I think in future definitely it will pick next level.
Indeed, one of the things that you've kind of mentioned, is the next level. When you actually look at, what the women cricketers were getting up to this point and how they were still making final after final and, even pushing Australia so hard, breaking Australia's winning streak, you just wonder that if they really got everything that they were supposed to get or due to get, what would the results really be? I mean, it doesn't really feel like very far before Indian women's cricket could also just dominate cricket.
Well, see, it is. I think there are lot many factors involved. In the sense, like when you want such decisions to take place, you want to back it up with performance, because that's the only way to sort of get things, in the front. So I think it is one of the big reasons. Like as I said, in the past 4 5 years, every ICC event, India has been in the finals. They were the finalists. Even the Commonwealth Games. Look at Asia Cup, which was not very regular in the past. Now they have revived it, and see the amount of viewership, on the digital platform, which I think has helped immensely in popularizing the wins or the momentum of the Indian team in the last 4 5 years. That it has girls have become a household names. Women's cricket is a brand in itself. All the ICC events where women's cricket is concerned is a standalone tournament. Way back, I think it was like we used to play like a curtain raiser thing to create that awareness among people. But now, in today's time, the ICC events grabs huge eyeballs. The MCG was packed, the Lords were packed. So I think it is growing slowly, unless and until you market the sport, you create that platform where you create those fan base for players, for the sport, and then naturally a lot of other things come into the picture. And every sport requires the national side to be performing, because at the end of the day, people like to follow those athletes or the team which has been doing well. And that is what the Indian team has been doing. I think that has helped hugely to this cause.
Julian, what's your take on this? How do we sort of push forward from this point? You've spoken about getting something, but the level of the Indian team is already so high with such a small pool of players. So what do you see as being the way forward?
Well, you can understood, you only say that a small pool of players, and you are consistently last 5 years you are playing all those finals. ICC event, 2 ICC event we played finals. First Commonwealth, again we won the Asia Cup. So only few girls are participating at this moment in our country. See, if that volume increase, what going to be happen in India? You don't not look back to Australia and other country. People will start follow our own country girls, and they'll be what Mithali said, the household name. And now probably few percent people know. I'm not talking about city. If you go to rural area, then still people don't know, don't watch. They don't have internet connection, or television also they don't have time. But if you create that buzz, definitely girls will come and participate. And morely from the village, girls only play sports maximum time in our country. Either it's a football, yeah, hockey, or athlete, or cricket also. So that buzz is required, and that should be enter in India, not in one particular area, one region of area. Then that growth will be not faster. That growth will be the slow. So I think you have to wait for some more time, because I'm very much, again I'm saying, I'm very much hopeful after IPL, and in few years Indian cricket going to dominate world cricket. And the amount of quality cricketer we have, and I think definitely Mithali also agree, because in domestic few facilities we have, still the amount of quality girls are participating, and think about when you get all those big facilities, the growth will be the next level. So I'm very much hopeful that Indian cricket in near future definitely going to dominate world cricket.
One of the big things that the both of you all did was that you kept Indian women's cricket visible at a time, when it wasn't really getting too much coverage, even in the media. And that perhaps is, your true legacy. The records you broke, or when Jhulan was the world's fastest bowler, or the records that Mithali was breaking, what you guys were essentially doing was making it to the pages, making people, forcing them to pay attention to women's cricket. That was such a huge deal. So when you look back at all those years, what do you think sort of drew you to the game of cricket initially? As you said, there wasn't much happening, there wasn't much money. There was a lot of love for the sport. There was a lot of passion for what you did, but there wasn't much money. So what drew you to the sport, and what really kept you there?
I'm sure most of us who played in the 90s or in the early 2000s, we didn't really think about instant gratification that overnight we need to be stars or anything. For us, the pure joy was to tour, to wear the India blues, play together, enjoy what was happening on the ground. We were so, I can say that, the 16, 18-year-olds of today are far more exposed to many things. They come with, they come prepared with, overall personality. But we actually had to work on our personality. As 16-year-olds, we were so naive and innocent, we hardly knew much about the outside world. Traveling alone was a huge deal. But now, like, they travel across the globe, like, on their own. So I think it is also the from one generation to the other, again, the evolution of the sport and how the sport has grown, and even in terms of the society, the exposure that the current generation of players enjoy, because everywhere there are leagues and they travel. Then with those leagues they gain a lot of match experience. For us, the match experience was domestic games, and then we were straight into the international. And in terms of facilities also, until we came under BCCI, most, even Julian will agree, that whatever we could manage, we would be more innovative in our training sessions. We practice on matting, and then we go and play on a turf wicket. Then we had to do the adjustment. Sometimes in the current scenario, like, I remember that when we travel to endure the jet lag, to get out of it, we would get 3-4 days, and we would get like a week where we play one practice game and get used to the climate and everything. But then we get out of the flight, within 2 days we're straight into an international ODI we are playing. So there is a huge difference. But yes, that is also part of the journey of the sport. And I think I would be very fortunate to have actually lived to enjoy even that side of it. It has its own charm. And coming into the current scenario, it's a lot more professional in terms of how the look for a player, how they look at prepare in terms of preparation, facility. Like, we have a video analyst, we have a bowling coach. Like, every department has a head. So if you have any trouble with, say, batting, you have a batting coach. You can improve your fielding through a fielding coach. Whereas those days it was just a coach and a manager, and everything is looked after by the captain and the coach. So there is no other assistance. Whereas here now you have so much of information at a click that all you had to do is probably do your homework well and get onto the ground. So I think in a way the technology also simplified a lot of things. But yes, it does has its own challenges also. There is so much of competition. There is no surprise element anymore. Like, if Jhulan has any variation in today's time, everybody would know when she's bowling what variation. Whereas in those days, if Julu had a variation, to figure it out, the 2 series is up. Because we didn't have any match videos that we could go back and watch. So that era had its own challenges. The current era has its own challenges. But I think overall I see that there has been tremendous growth in terms of the standard of the sport. with the inception of T20 format. Slowly, I'm sure and I'm very optimistic that even test matches will be revived. We were fortunate to play a pink ball test before we retired, a day and night test
Yeah.
match, which we never dreamt that we would ever get to play. So I think a lot of things are happening. And to add to what Jhulan said, that next year is going to be big is because there is an under 19 World Cup happening for the first time. That, under 16 to under 19 age group girls can compete, at that level where they are wearing the India jerseys. And the same pool of players tomorrow will graduate in 2-3 years to play for the senior level. Similarly, even the unidentified players who don't get too much opportunities to showcase their talent can actually be groomed in an IPL team. That is another platform to again, show that they're good enough to, play the higher level. So I think these tournaments actually create or probably expand the pool of players to an extent that maybe in 3-4 years time we get to see India A, India B. Our bench strength will be solid. So that in itself will create a healthy competitiveness among within the Indian circuit. That tomorrow the other teams will look at the Indian team as the team to beat.
I think they already do look at the Indian team as being the team to beat, except for maybe Australia, who are
Yes.
like on a really crazy run.
We probably
But-
will probably reduce that gap or bridge that.
But when you talk about the IPL coming in, next year, one of the things that both of you all have kind of said, Jhulan very clearly said that this is her international retirement. I'm really looking forward to knowing whether you guys are going to be playing the women's IPL. I think the first season totally deserves you guys playing.
I think Mithali will say a better way because she have taken a retirement first. Then I follow to her.
Well, see, I've kept that open for a fact that if there is still that thing that, as you rightly said, many people have also told me that it is the first season of women's IPL and should be part of it. So let's see. There's still some more time. There are a few more months left for me to make up whether if I want to get in as a player or in any other capacity.
Jhulan is still smiling. She's going to run in, with those long strides in her run-up, and she's just going to bowl batters over and not even blink about it.
Enough of long stride. Enough of long stride. Last 20 years, I have done more than 20 lakh stride probably. But honestly speaking, is a good thing for women's cricket. We all are looking forward for this because since last 5-6 years we keep asking for this because this is the new generation of cricket. That is how Australia developed their cricket. That is how their grassroots level have developed. That is how England cricket is growing so nicely. So we also need for our domestic cricketers. I want to see our domestic cricketer have decent amount of facilities, decent amount of mindset, and when they'll go to international cricket, at least they should feel little confident, and they should not feel that they'll take 3 series, 4 series to settle down, and then you are playing. So earlier we used to face those things. I think this gap we have to narrow. That is how I'm very much excited because I want to see, because talent we have in our country. We just want to gap that mental setback kind of stuff. Those are the key elements for me to have women's IPL, because I feel our domestic cricketers are not getting that amount of competitiveness. Like they are very competitor among themselves, but when they're playing against quality side, somehow I feel they are not 100% at par with others. So we also gone through. I was there also there when many World Cups, many series. Same thing I also feel. So I always feel that bridge needs to you need that bridge. You have to cut down those small areas. And I feel that women's IPL will definitely change. There's going to be change of women's cricket phase, and I'm really very much hopeful for that.
Since the both of you all have spoken so much about the new generation, I wanted to ask you that, over the course of your careers, have you had to kind of change how you sort of communicated, with your teammates? You were both captains, you both had to communicate. When you first initially began, you had a similar, group, a similar age. But then as you came towards the end of your careers, you had youngsters who had grown up in the internet age, who were so comfortable on Instagram, who would have a party, who would play the guitar, who would dance. So how did you sort of have to change your communication methods? Is it something you thought about, that with this younger lot, I just need to speak differently?
I think, see, for me per se, since I've led for a long time. When the first time I led, I had ex captains under me. I was one of those young girls, so clearly I was inexperienced. Of course, that required other skills in terms of leadership. Then when it came to players of the same age, like me, Jhulan, Amitabh, all of us have played the under 19s together, so we all have that comfort level because you're that kind of buddies. Then when it comes to the juniors, and then the fourth generation, and where players like Richa, who've never born when I made a debut. So when it comes to that sort of a gap, yes, I do struggle sometimes to sort of understand from where they come, or for them to understand what I'm trying to say, because they have all grown up seeing both of us play, or revered us as idols. So suddenly to come and play alongside us, share the dressing room, and sometimes, even if I don't talk and have a straight face, they think I'm angry because they are unable to read what I'm thinking or what. So there's
That they don't feel, you also feel.
so they,
Many times.
but then when it comes to friends, they understand because I'm far more open because I enjoy with players of the same age group. We've had histories and stuff like that. But when it comes to the juniors, as a captain, you cannot really extend too much, is because then you don't want them talking about being biased to a certain section of players. So you probably have to maintain that that distance, but at the same time be able to be open to talking to them. So yes, there are times when I try and make an effort to go and talk, crack a joke. But yes, the times I don't understand their joke, they don't understand my jokes. And people like Sneha Rana, Meghna Singh, Renuka Singh, who enjoy being on those digital platforms, like social media, they would ask me like, let's do a gig or say a dance step. And I was like, I'm not into all these reels and everything. Arey Didi, you don't know anything, just join us. No, so sometimes, yeah, I let down my guard, but most of the time when it is in the tournament, there are too many other things as a captain that you need to look into, that you get very little time to even to think as an individual player. So yeah.
What about you, Julian? I've heard such great things about, how you communicate with the youngsters. I'm sure you didn't mind, shaking a leg or two.
Takes a leg or two with the hands, and nobody gets a space on the dance floor because her limbs are too long for any of us to have a step, to do a
So
step.
glad to have a captain like her, na? She always give me that pace. In a dance floor also, she always clear for me all the space. No, she have dance means you need to clear that floor. But one more thing, yes, definitely. I'm a person who loves to talk, who love to mingle with others, try to understand the culture of other person, their mindset. If I can take few things for them, it's not like that I am going to share my knowledge. I'm not a teacher, so I'm like, I want to take something from them. Maybe that person have something, some good quality. Everybody has some good qualities. If I can take that one, and that might help me. If I can share few things, that might help her. And that is how I am. And I love to chit chat. I love to be whatever way. I just want to switch off my mindset from the cricket field, because that is the best way. And the best people are all youngsters. You just go and enjoy with them, and they will do everything. They will do everything. You just need to give them that comfort zone, and they will give everything on the field. And definitely, when I started, is different. When the captain was different, then Mithali, then me, then two other senior captain in my playing 11. That's also new experience for me. I had gone through, but yes, those are the things you learn each and every day. It's not a never ending process. It's you keep learning new stuff. And those youngsters are, I don't want to share one name. I think Mithali remember that one series we were playing against Sri Lanka at down south, and I was bowling horrible that series. And one of the youngsters, they're debuting, and after the match, she quietly come to me and she said, "Why can't you bowl Yorker?" I just look at her. I said, "Yeah, that was a good point." But if I am a youngster, if I tell my senior, they said, "Get out from here." But that is how that comfort zone. But that is because of communication. If you don't communicate nicely, that youngster debutant not come to you and say something like that. No, that is an important thing, because you don't know which point it will help for the team. So that's why I always feel that communication should be very clear, and it's from both the sides. It's not should be my side. I just communicate from my way, and you're not response. So then that communication was not 100%. For me, is a communication is very important, and that should be clear. Then you are able to understand that person thought process, or they will understand my thought process, what I want from them, what they want from us. So that's why I try to mingle with them, and they are very smart, because digitally they are so smart. They do a lot of things. So you just keep watching them, what they're doing, and you just keep laughing because you enjoy that. And for me, obviously, it's the best way to switch off from the cricket field, because they do a lot of different stuff I never did in my 20 years of cricket career.
So, one of the things that you've spoken about is that, in terms of communication with the new generation, you also perhaps need to be ready to give them a reality check if needed. How important is it for a senior player, for someone who's been around for so long, to be able to call a spade, especially when you're speaking to a teammate, not have to sort of walk on eggshells ki bhai isko bura lag jayega ya usko kaisa lagega. How important is it to just say what you have on your mind?
I always think that way, that again, I'll say exchange of ideas are important, because they have different idea. They are watching that game different perspective. I'm playing the game, I'm taking the responsibility, different aspects. There will be some differences. So how you break those differences, that is important for me. And a lot of other stuff is there, but I don't want to say in this platform. But is important is communication skill is important. And if you don't understood their mindset, then it's difficult, because they are different mindset. They didn't saw all those hardship, they didn't go through all those things. For them is everything is a flamboyant stuff. Is cricket, our life cannot be all the time is a flamboyant. Yes, we need that flamboyant character, but life of cricket cannot be same all the time. So you need to know when to change those things, and that is how you have to communicate. So that's why I always talk to them. I talk to everyone, because I feel that is how you create a good relationship, knowing that person better, and secondly knowing different culture also. That's also important.
What about you, Mithali? Would you look at the responsibility of a senior also be to call a spade, to give a reality check to the junior, or do you feel that's something that maybe the coach or whoever else sort of needs to just step in and say what they need to?
Well, see, that depends, because there are a set of players who are quite who are an extrovert, and they talk a lot. So with such players, you can always say it the way you feel it, because they would be probably in a position to understand. But there are also players who come from a different background, who are not as talkative or an extroverts, but they are introverts. And sometimes just saying it the way it is might not be actually getting to you're not able to put across what exactly you want to do. So there are different ways of dealing with different sort of players, because everybody are not, or probably don't have the same attitude or mindset, because all of us, India is so diverse that we all come from different parts of our country. There are players who are from the metropolitan cities, and there are players who come from the interiors. Sometimes a young player has so much of burden of managing her own family, that there are so many things can affect a player's mindset. So it's very important to understand every player, and and there is a way to put across to them, in a better way, because at the end of the day, your point has to be put across. The player has to understand what probably a senior player wants to express, or say a captain is expecting of them. So there will be aggressive players, there will be submissive players, but it's just finding the right wire to make them understand at the end of the day.
And we'll just wind down this session with just a final question. And it's concerning what kept you going through your careers. What was the driving force in your career? What made you believe that I can play this game for 20 years? Because there were moments in your career when there were huge gaps between the number of matches you were playing each year. Sometimes you were hardly playing. There were years when you would kind of maybe play 14 matches in the entire year. So what would be the kind of driving force? What would sort of, was it records? Was it the runs you scored? Was it beating the best in the world? What was your driving force?
Fast bowler.
पूछा runs पूछा रे
He's bowling the death overs, huh? From 45 to 50.
ठीक है, यहाँ पे भी तू कर ले. No, anyway, definitely a lot of things are there. It's not about only runs or wickets. And first of all, as an athlete, you cannot plan that you're going to play 20 years. It's not possible to plan. You just go season wise, you go series wise, you go year wise, but you cannot plan 20 years you're going to play. But for me, I always enjoy represent country. When I saw that tricolor is flying in front of the jersey, name is India is written down. When you were singing national anthem in the middle of the ground, and those are the moment for me. I always live with that. I dream with that. Yes, definitely performance is required. Definitely there was a lot of things happened that in a year we played one series also. It was difficult to motivate. You get frustrated. But at the same time, one thing is always awake me is, okay, don't worry. If you want to be number one, or you wanted to be not individual number one team, you have to work hard. You have to do something extra for the team. And that is how I motivate. And motivation can be so different way. Every individual have different way of motivation. For me, is always I motivate in this, like, okay, I'm unhappy, I'm frustrated, but again I start visualizing, okay, tomorrow, next day, 1 year, after 1 year I'm going to wear India t-shirt and going to bowl first over. So plan for that. Don't give up. So that is how I work. That is the things help me, and I'm continue doing that way in my career. And again, 20 years I never thought I'm going to play 20 years. I thought maybe maximum 5 to 6 years I'm going to play, because it's not possible. But one thing we understand, both of us understand very early stage, that if you want to continue, if you want to deliver more, definitely we have to work hard in our training process. And that's I think because of that, I still agree with me. Because of that, we're able to extend our career, because both of us very serious about our training. I don't think so हम दोनों ने कभी training miss किया है. And probably we skip some other thing, but hardly training miss किया होगा, because हम लोग इंग्लैंड भी गए थे, वहां पे भी हम लोग कहीं पब्लिक जिम ढूंढ के जाके वहां पे भी जिम करके आए. So what I'm saying is, understood that things that it's not about only skills, it's not about other stuff, it's all about your process, your training process, your eating habit, and all those things. But for playing for India is the biggest motivation factor for me. That is a beauty. Uska substitute kuch bhi nahi ho sakta in my life.
Indeed, when I still look at Mithali bat and I see her technique, it's still so perfect. So it's clearly comes down to the kind of training that you guys did in the early years. But Mithali, what worked for you? What was your driving force? Because it always seemed like you had a certain goal in mind whenever you were playing, whether it was a start of a single innings or even perhaps over your entire career. It just looked like you knew what you wanted.
When you start, the first goal is to play for India. For any beginner, you ask any young kid, they would say like India khel. That is your first goal. So when you make it to the Indian team, your next goal is to like har match khelna hai, playing 11 mein rehna. You want to be the one of the core members in the team. But when you start performing, then you want to be consistent. You want to be the player that your team is dependent on, and who has faith that you'll finish the game and come. So for a period of time, it was more of my own individual goals that I wanted to perform for the team. I want to win matches for the team. What happens was, I realized to promote the sport, individual brilliance to some extent is works, but more than that, it requires a team to do well. So then what happens is when you see young children coming up, when their parents come up and say like, when I look at you, I want my daughter to play for India. So what happens, your own individual goals or your own dream is not limited to your own limited to you per se. Then it becomes a larger picture where many people are looking at you, you sort of drawing inspiration or looking at you as an example. Then what I felt was probably this is a time to build a team where, just not my own individual brilliance, but there are many other players who can form together to create say a path where, the entire team, the entire sport is known. And that is something has happened in my part of the journey, where I realized that it is just not, say, Jhulan's 5-wicket haul or her record or my records. Because yes, that has got us names. But what about the sport? The sport still needs that pump. It needs that impetus. And that could happen only when we start to do well in bigger events where a lot of people are watching. And I realized that World Cups are those platforms. Because when the Indian team goes to the World Cup, all of us now we are backing the men's. Because, it's a huge platform. World Cup is a World Cup. So winning a World Cup was one of my biggest goal. Because I know that, once you start winning bigger events, then there are a lot of people who are following that event will start following the national side. And now with the matches televised, it is equally important to put up the best standard of the sport and the people backing the national side. So after a certain part of my journey, my goal was not limited to me. Mithali ko 100 marna hai, Mithali ko jitan. No, it was like, it was a bigger picture where you have to empower your girls, that they can take forward what probably we have tried to build, because we cannot play forever. At some point, we have to hand over the baton to the future generation. And I would want to leave it at a point where, it is strong enough that, the current generation take it forward. And I'm very happy at a point where I retired because the team is really doing well. So absolutely no complaints there.
And the both of you all have done what every cricketer or every sports person tries to do. Leave their sport in a better place than it was when they began. You have both managed to take Indian cricket to a higher place where it's doing better, is challenging for World Cups, and that's more than what anyone can ask for. Thank you so much for joining us for the HT Leadership Summit. See you again soon.
Thank you.
A vision becomes a milestone when it helps make our lives richer with love and laughter. When it helps make a cleaner, smarter, and a more beautiful planet. So that you can set off on joyous new journeys and adventures. Building stronger bonds and bridging impossible distances, which take you from the ever new to the forever beautiful. Opening up vistas and windows to a vibrant new world. A vision becomes a milestone when it touches millions of lives. Aditya Birla Group. Big in your life.
Wealthy in minerals, rapid industrialization, swift pace of development, creating its unique identity in the nation's development roadmap, is the success story of Chhattisgarh. Chhattisgarh is presently ranked 4th in the Ease of Doing Business Index in India. A lot of credit for this goes to the Chhattisgarh's visionary leadership to create a bright future for its citizens. With the potential to generate 24,000 megawatts, Chhattisgarh is all set to be the power pivot of the country. Chhattisgarh has been topping the charts as the cleanest state. Due to the all-round rural development and agriculture welfare schemes, Chhattisgarh is a model state for rural prosperity and urban excellence. With the intent of the state leadership and results being seen on ground, Chhattisgarh is on the path of rapid and model growth and development.
There are those who are always looking for what's next. Changing lanes, shifting modes, always in command. Sensing what lies ahead. That first scent of yet another success. The all-new Hyundai Tucson next drives now.
माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी के विजन और प्रदेश के युवा मुख्यमंत्री पुष्कर सिंह धामी के मिशन से प्रगति के पथ पर निरंतर आगे बढ़ रहा है उत्तराखंड। रोजगार, शिक्षा, स्वास्थ्य, निवेश और भ्रष्टाचार मुक्त उत्तराखंड के सपने को साकार कर रही है उत्तराखंड सरकार। पर्यटन से राज्य में मिल रहे हैं आर्थिक प्रगति को पंख। उत्तराखंड के सीएम तक पहुंच रही जनता की आवाज। उत्तराखंड में बढ़ता निवेश बन रहा है विकास का मुख्य आधार। राज्य की जनता की सुनी मन की बात, मिलने जा रहा है राज्य को मजबूत भू कानून का आधार। उत्तराखंड के वीर सैनिकों का हो रहा है सम्मान। प्रदेश में भ्रष्टाचार पर की बड़ी चोट। सुखी, समृद्ध, खुशहाली की तरफ लगातार है बढ़ना। जन जन का है सपना, आगे बढ़ता रहे उत्तराखंड अपना।
A land of awakening. A land of joy. A land where every step forward is a journey within. I have started my journey. When will you start yours?
With over 8,000 passionate employees working hard in difficult terrain, pushing boundaries, transforming India's energy landscape. We stand ready with innovative prowess to write another history, fueling the nation and contributing to India's energy security. We are Oil India Limited.
From the interior parts of hilly areas to metro cities, today there are more than 8,800 Jan Aushadhi Kendras have been opened to provide affordable and quality medicines. These centers have 1,616 types of medicines and 250 types of surgical devices available at up to 90% off. By providing affordable medicines to about 10 lakh patients every day, Jan Aushadhi has been able to save up to 18,000 crore rupees for needy people in the last 8 years. Quality is also at the forefront of medicines at low prices.
2025 तक हम छलांग लगा चुके होंगे $1 ट्रिलियन डिजिटल इकोनॉमी की ओर।
आज जब हम आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव मना रहे हैं तो मेरा भी यही सपना है कि भारत में हर हाथ में स्मार्टफोन हो, हर खेत में ड्रोन हो और हर घर में समृद्धि हो।
Digital India, catalyzing New India's decade. Jai Hind.
जय जय गंगे जय जय गंगे नमामि गंगे नहीं रुकेंगे हम स्वच्छ करेंगे तू युग युग से बहती आई तूने ही हमको पाला है तेरी उंगली पकड़ चलना सीखा जीवन तूने ही संभाला है तेरा कर्ज चुकाना है हमको कर्तव्य निभाना है हमको नमामि गंगे हम स्वच्छ करेंगे हम स्वच्छ करेंगे
Power Grid, a Maharatna PSU of Government of India, largest transmission utility of country,
embarked on one such remarkable journey to establish one nation, one grid, one frequency, high voltage integrated transmission network, an electric superhighway through which power flows across the length and breadth of the country. Meeting challenges has always been a way of life at Power Grid. Transmitting power, transforming lives.
REC unleashes the potential of energy. REC funds energy. Funding that catalyzes. Funding that inspires. Funding that transforms. For sustainability and reliability. For investment and development. Adding value every day in every way. This is what our energy is. This is REC.